Just as a reminder, this session will be recorded. Our first question is coming from Andrea Lands.
Hi guys, thank you for taking the time out of your day to speak with us. This question is for Michael because you are no stranger to the Oscars and we are gearing up for award season and all our for your consideration coverage. So especially during this year where things have been crazy, Greyhound has faced the obstacle of not having a theatrical release. What does it mean to you to have buzz around a movie, awards buzz around a movie that you worked on? And how is it compared to like last year when you went to the Oscars?
Well, for me, Greyhound was really special because of the amount of care and attention that went into it. And it did go on for quite a long time. And we took 2 separate passes at it, a year apart from each other. The whole process for me lasted almost 2 years. So to see it come from where it started to where it ended was extremely gratifying. It literally was like watching a child grow up. So that's what my biggest takeaway is just I was so happy. Everybody was so happy at the end result.
Okay, great. And then Andrea, was that directed towards everybody or?
Yeah, anyone can answer that.
Well, I'll say what has been remarkable about this movie is, you know, without under normal circumstances, it would be gone from theaters. And Apple's done such a tremendous job with this film that it's, if you turn on your Apple TV, it's like it just got released. So this thing has been going for 6 months, like it's a first-run movie, and none of us, thankfully, approached this as if it would be some kind of streaming lesser than. And so I think that the everything's on the screen as far as how epic it turned out.
Yeah.
Yep. And Mark's still editing, right? You're still editing on the movie?
Working on the film, actually. So, no, for me, it was just very gratifying again to see how, you know, the audience really did have a thirst for kind of all the information and the pace of it and everything we packed into it. And every time we screened it for the audience, it just kind of, it was remarkable how interested they were in the subject. So it just was really great that it kind of came out the way it did. And so many people have been able to see it in light of, you know, where we are right now. So.
Great. Our next question comes from Sarah Musnicki.
Hi guys, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. My question's for Mark. This film is such a fast-paced, high-intensity film, and I just wanted to know what the editing process was like in making sure that we got that fast-pacedness, but also spent ample time with the characters as well during all the chaos.
Yeah, I mean, that was always the focus, you know, maintaining that pace and the thrill while maintaining the clarity for the audience through all the naval jargon, excuse me, and all the information we throw at them. It really was a painstaking, but, you know, very rewarding process. And again, it seemed every time we screened it for a test audience, their appetite was strong for all that info. And I just, you know, and with the VFX and everything, we just kind of always focus on telling the story from Krause's perspective. So, yeah, that's how we kind of maintained our pacing, et cetera. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Our next question comes from James Lindorf.
Hi, everyone. I'm kind of curious, maybe it's my biology background talking, but was there a part of the score or the sound design that incorporated whale sounds? And if that's true, I'm curious, what is the inspiration for bringing natural sounds into something that is like this cold metallic world of battleships and U-boats?
Well, that's me. I'll take that. I think Mike was very happy that I didn't use actual whale sounds, but they were the inspiration. I wanted to create this otherworldly. I see this movie as part modern thriller, part period piece, and part horror movie. And so the horror aspects of it are these lurking U-boats below, and I wanted to give them this otherworldly sound that you couldn't really tell what it is. Is it a synth? Is it a whale? Is it which it is, a violin being played very poorly through a bunch of effects. And there are other instruments played very poorly through effects. But by doing that, it's a human playing this weird sound, which I think gets a little bit more under your skin. But yeah, definitely it's called the whale sounds now. Mike, I think you termed it the whale sounds, and I happily take that because that was the inspiration.
Michael, you're on mute.
Sorry, I don't know. It was either Gary or myself who gave it the nickname, the whale sound, but it was used very well. And because of your modular construction of your music, we were able to move those things around when best needed. There's lots of different parts of the orchestra. That's the way Blake delivers it. And so being modular like that, you can refer to different pieces of music and use them whatever's used best. Because things are always changing and evolving. This movie evolved because it was Tom's movie. He wrote it, produced it. He just kept pouring more ideas on it, more ideas. And so the movie was always shifting and changing. So that was one of the great joys to watch it mature. And it matured with the music, and it matured with additional dialogue, it matured with everything. Visual effects, oh my gosh, how it matured. So it was everything sort of had to be modular to perform its best at all times, no matter what Tom had in mind. We had to be able to deliver something that would enhance it.
Yeah, I've worked with Mike several times, and the best way to work with Mike is to give him a toolbox of ideas and then come to the playback, and having seen the film 50 times myself, be again surprised as if it's new with this new mix. And oh, you put that there? That scared me. So that's always a treat.
Okay, great. And we had Sidney joining us as well. Our next question is from Abe Friedtanzer.
Hi there. I'm curious for any of you what past movies or television shows, either that you've worked on or that you haven't, served as positive inspirations for the kind of mood you wanted to convey here.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Sure. What past movies or television shows that either you worked on or you didn't served as positive inspiration for the kind of mood you wanted to convey here?
I'd say one of them would have been the Pacific miniseries, with HBO, which also with Playtone and Michael and Blake as well. Just kind of a very similar kind of feel about the two projects, I'd say, for me.
Well, for me, it was, I'm a big fan of World War II movies anyway, and I've watched quite a few submarine movies. I've watched a lot of, Battle of the North Atlantic films, and they're all very good in various ways. I think this way, what we talked about early on was not only its authenticity, but we had to keep the thing moving, and because it's a rush. The whole movie is about, they've got 48 hours or something to get across this black zone that they call it, and so everything had to be rushed. And the fact that they're being chased and they have to chase back after the submarines, and then go to protect another ship, and then go to rescue another, it had to be frantic for 90 minutes of just frantic. But yes, we have some pauses because you can't take too much of that. But so the inspiration from other movies was just take the best of those scenes, those moments in those other movies, and sort of pile them, or put them together, construct them together to where it's just moving, 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 moving.
I guess for me, it was, all my work on the superhero TV show genres kind of prepared me because I saw Captain Krause as a superhero. And learning how to keep that tension up through seasons after seasons, this was one battle after another with maybe a 30 frame respite between. But also I was very inspired by some classical music that in particular, a Shostakovich symphony, which I wanted to sort of make the score feel like it makes me feel when I listen to it. And it just has this forward propulsion that I thought, well, that's cool.
Okay, great. Our next question comes from Boris Kellichter. You're on mute, Boris.
Hello, Blake. The music plays an important part in the success of this great movie. Which are for you the main differences working on such popular and amazing series DC and a movie like this one?
I think the biggest difference is with those shows, you kind of have to be really bigger than life because they aren't real people. They're superheroes running around in costumes. And while I try to find their humanity through the score, it tends to be way more operatic. With this, it's back to the old film scoring rules, which are stay out of the way, support, and have your moments where you need to. And what I try to do is whenever there was a down moment is really return it to a very comfortable, known orchestral, warm sound so that when the tension's tense, it's make it stop. Please make it stop. Can I go back to that nice oboe for a second?
Yeah.
And as my daughter said when we were watching it, towards the end of the film, there's a moment where Tom thinks it's over and it starts and she says, he just put his slippers on. So that's kind of the feeling we were all going for. Is it over? No, it's not.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Boris.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Tony Tillotto.
Hi, gentlemen. It sounds like for Blake and Michael that the two of you work together a lot, especially to incorporate sounds into the score. And also for Mark, question of what kind of shape the film that you get as far as the visual effects and stuff like that when you start to edit?
Yeah, I mean, it was, the VFX were all just, at that point, post-viz, wireframe type stuff. There was some, we put some score in and it all just kind of comes together from there. And you just initially you could feel how strong and what a worthwhile thing it was to, working towards the ultimate goal. It just was a very powerful thing from the get-go. So, yep.
I thought what was cool with Mike and Mark was that we got to revisit this twice, as Mike said earlier, because when I'm working on a print, I don't have the visual effects, I don't have the sound effects. I'm just hoping that it's going to work. And so on our first mix, I remember realizing that some of the cool sounds that Mike was coming up with are in conflict. And so by the time we got to the second round, we really had a cohesion of you go low, I'll go high, you go scary, I'll go emotional. And that took the three of us for a year, like going back and forth and throwing ideas back and forth. So that is the good thing about it lasting so long.
Yeah.
Great. Our next question comes from Casey Mendoza.
Yeah, this is a question for everyone, and it's kind of a possible advice question for viewers at home. But because this movie was released on Apple TV Plus instead of theaters, what would you say is your best advice to kind of recreating the theater experience from home, especially when it comes to possibly recreating the immersive experience or getting the best possible picture and sound quality?
Well, when I first heard it and saw it on TV, I had some concerns, but they were just concerns that I wanted to follow up on. So I did talk to the Apple engineers, and they were very, very helpful. Actually, I spoke to them before we actually, before the release, we had made a special streaming version of the sound mix. And so I conferred with them at that point, and then we conferred again once we finished it. And then we conferred again when they gave me like a test run that I could do in my own home TV. And then when the actual release came. So I was in contact with them quite a bit. And it is, for me, it is very difficult to transition from a big stage, you know, it's 60 feet by 50 feet with a 40-foot ceiling, mixing in Atmos with, you know, 40,000 watts of power, pushing speakers, pushing, you know, 80 speakers. It's quite a bit different experience. So where I ended up with the conversations with all the Apple engineers was the best way for you to receive these presentations, both with picture and sound, is to get the latest equipment. They sounded more like salesmen at that point, but I believe it to be true. The latest receiver being the Apple box, the latest smart TVs would have the better sound. Obviously, separate sound systems, whether they be 5.1, 7.1, or Atmos. Anything you can do to upgrade your own personal experience at home is valuable and good. And it's not that you have to, because these mixes and the picture are designed to play across multiple formats. So just give yourself the best shot at it. And if you have your own personal little theater at home, would be the optimum. Then you could like customize it any way you want. But most of us don't have that. So it's just the better you want it, there's more money you spend.
I was able to get these, you know, one of these, and I'm a sound guy, but I got one of these inexpensive sound bars. It's an Atmos sound bar with a sub, and it's terrific. And, you know, you have to remember that film is front lit and TV's backlit. So you need to, you know, blacken the room as much as you can, and don't forget popcorn.
Exactly. Yeah.
As far as the picture goes, one thing I can say is that Gary Goetzman, our producer, he had a challenge with the timing of the picture, with the visual aspect of the colorization, and the and brightness in the tone, because Apple's first instinct was to make it as gorgeous as possible, and he had to pull them back from that. So I want it to look more vintage. You know, I like the grays, I like the blues. And so he had to tweak it so that it optimized what he wanted, and it satisfied the Apple engineering people with what they wanted.
Okay, great. Our next question comes from Marvin Nolasco.
I've actually got two questions, and these questions are precluded with a warning to the audiences who have not yet watched this spectacular Greyhound. Spoiler alert for those who have not watched this. My first question is exclusively for Sidney, for his amazing editing skill for this film. One of the scenes that really hounds me to this very moment is that scene when the battle ravages on the ocean, the camera suddenly tilts up to the heavens. What design philosophy was behind that amazing scene?
That scene was in the script, and I understand it was sort of to show the scope of the battle and give you a sense of how, I mean, for me, I mean, I can't speak for Tom Hanks or whatever, but it's a sense of how, you know, humanity is down there fighting, killing each other, and in the distance is the Aurora Borealis, which is sort of eternal. and these battles are just sort of ultimately totally insignificant in terms of humanity. That's sort of my understanding. I don't know whether anyone else wants to, give their explanation of it. I just thought it was a sort of a beautiful moment that kind of takes you out of the heat of the battle and gives you perspective on what war is in terms of the, I don't know, the time frame of all mankind, and and more.
Thank you. And my second question is for everyone. Is there any particular scene that hounds you to this very moment because of its utter power and magnificence?
Well, I'll say that one in particular that you mentioned, Marvin. But the ending still moves me to tears. I see it as bittersweet. I don't see, I mean, it's heroic and it's a job well done, but it's very bittersweet. I mean, it's only the beginning of the battle, and what is about to transpire changed the world, and many lives were lost. So that one still gets me.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of the same thing. It's at that moment where he receives the call from the help, and he gets his orders to kind of stand down, and he takes his orders quietly, and he's done his job, and he goes to finally can get some rest, and it just very quietly goes and gets his rest, and he'll probably end up going back the other way across the ocean again. So yeah, that was for me. That's the strongest moment.
Yeah, for me, it's when he gets his first kill. The long kind of search for the submarine early in the show, and then the crew is cheering, and we realize that Tom Hanks realizes the weight of what he's done and the horror of it, and how he, and probably alone there, realizes the awful meaning of what this accomplishment was, and that it can't be an unmitigated, you can't really cheer the death of 50 men, who, regardless of who they are. That's a powerful moment.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. Question comes from Garrett von Kallenbach. Garrett, you're on mute.
I am sorry. Two-part question. I wanted to apologize if it's been asked already. I came in a bit late, but the first one's for Michael, and I was just curious about how you went about determining the sound of the boats and the weaponry in terms of making it authentic to the era, but also unique, so it allowed the film to separate itself from a lot of other World War II era films. And the second half is for Blake. Basically, how did you go about deciding to mix, say, military themes and military style music with the music of the era to, give it full immersion? Thank you.
Well, when it comes to the gunfire and the ordnance that's used in the film, obviously authenticity was something that everybody wanted, and that was our starting point. So all of these guns, you can find the original material in libraries. Now, what makes it different, and it makes it different on any movie with any sound designer, is what do you do? How far do you take it from there, from its original source? Obviously, we're making a movie. We don't want it to be strictly authentic. So you want it to be dramatic. You want it to be exciting. You want people to knock them off their seat if you can, when the big guns go off. So you just sweeten them. You can sweeten them with 5 different new elements, or 10 or 20 new elements, but so that's just to taste. And we experiment with different sizes and shapes of all the guns. They all want to sound unique. They all want to sound powerful and beautiful and scary. So it's an emotional thing. The guns have to be emotional. They're not there to just go bang. They are there to excite and amaze you, because if you can imagine a real destroyer that has so much weaponry on board that's going off at the same time, plus they're being shot at, it's got to be pretty horrifying. And these are not just rifles that are going off. This is, high caliber, big time guns, and with big time explosions. So you want it to be amazing.
And for the music's question, I decided early on to use anachronistic sounds. Synthesizers weren't available during the war, but I felt like just to put a period spin on it, like we did with the Pacific, this was more of a modern film set in older times, and it also allowed for this back and forth between the reverent hymnal qualities of the score, being the tried and true orchestra in a very set setting, while the action could be angular and big right turns and weird sounds that you're not accustomed to. And that was the approach there.
Great. Our next question comes from Ricardo Gallegos.
So, hello. The film has these creepy scenes where the German enemies proclaim the imminent death of the crew over the loudspeakers. I wanted to know, how did you approach these scenes? How did you all approach them, from capturing the face of terror of everyone to designing the sound atmosphere to having the perfect music to accompany everything?
Well, I
yeah,
think
so much of it was in the. I'm sorry, Mike. So much of it was in the script, and I think again, as we started to get more and more of the pieces together, it kind of there was just a natural kind of evolution. The music and the sounds, and when we had all the toolbox and the VFX, it we just kind of all it just kind of came together that way. It evolved. Michael?
Yeah, well, just having all of the different tools that you can at your disposal, and making those choices, and it's frame by frame. What can be heard here? What should be heard here? Do you want to hand it over in favor of music? You want to hand it over in favor of sound effects? Of course, dialogue always needs to be a concern that must be heard at all times. So it's literally a frame by frame kind of decision-making process. There's a lot of music in this movie. There's probably 85 minutes of music in a 92-minute movie. And as well as a lot of warfare and dialogue. So the trick is to how to hear that music without hearing the music. Use the music, use the sound effects, use the dialogue the best way you can on a frame by frame basis.
Yeah, and also it's the magic of going to a mix. I mean, Mark, when he was cutting this, the voice of the German, of the head of the wolf pack was a completely different voice in his cut, in my cut, the first time we mixed it. And then, they changed the voice a couple of times. It got scarier. Everything got scary. It was cut tighter. Mike mixed it scarier. But to that point, there's so much, like Mike was saying, there's so much going on, but there's also in the first 2 reels of the film, there's so much lingo that you don't understand. This military, only people on ships understand. Sure. And so you're having to stay out of the way of that and make sure that the right words are understood.
Thank you.
Great. Our next question comes from Rick Ellis.
Hi, guys. This question, I think, is for Mark or Sidney. For everyone we've spoken with, just said that Tom came into this, he had very specific ideas about what every aspect of the movie. And I'm wondering, what's that like from the editing standpoint to work with someone who has a very specific idea of things as opposed to working on a project where it's a little more up in the air?
Yeah, with Tom, who's always just, he has a great deal of respect for the audience, and always gives them credit. They'll get it, and and it's just he's always just focused on the meat of the story. So again, this is all told from Krause's perspective, more or less, and he was always there to remind us of that, and always, as you would imagine, keeps the room light, and it's a good creative environment. Yeah.
Sidney, you have any thoughts about that, or?
Well, his intention was that the whole show would be from the Krause point of view, and I think that was stuck to pretty closely. So I think that was one of his major concerns, that it be, and I know the novel also was a very interior novel, so he wanted probably to honor that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
And our next question comes from Bernard Ozowski.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. My question is for Mark and for Sidney. So in watching the movie, I was struck by the amount of specific detail that the audience is able to internalize about warfare. I wrote actually that it was sort of how trigonometry won the war. And I was curious to hear your thoughts on the challenge of conveying that much technical information alongside the sort of visual representations of the warfare that all that material denoted. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Well, I could say one of the challenges for me was to figure out what was going on. And luckily our director, who used to be a DP, is very smart and understood all the minutiae of everything in terms of, he could tell me how many shells would needed to be shot in reality to kill a sub, or there's like different sonar. There's like a slow sonar and a fast sonar. And one is for, the closer the submarine gets to you, you switch to the fast sonar because it's coming so quickly, you want the pings to happen faster. There's just, and all of that was really, that's sort of what the story is about the very specific challenges of a destroyer finding a submarine and successfully destroying it. And for me, the challenge was understanding it and then trying to realize that with the images that we had. I don't know, Mark might want to speak to this more.
Yeah, I totally agree. The focus in this movie is the details, and yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say much more than that. I absolutely agree. Thank you.
Well, the other thing I would say is that, when we were cutting there, everything looking out was all green screen, and, there were no submarines, there were no ships, there was some previs stuff, and you just had to figure it out and, be guided from, certainly by Aaron, who knew exactly what he was cutting or what he was shooting and why, and to make that intelligible to the audience.
Thank you.
I have one more question from Ricardo Gallegos.
There's this. This is a question for Blake Neely. There's been lots and lots of war films. How do you approach the creation of on an original score with the pressure of trying to bring something fresh to the table?
Well, that's the pressure, is to try to do something fresh. And there have been so many war movies, and there have been so many fantastic scores. And I think that my approach is just to try to forget all of that and honor what's come before you, but try to do your own thing. And I can only really write me. But yeah, that was definitely, you know, when Gary and Tom called, there was a, hey, we want a theme like from the Pacific, or like, and that was actually the most terrifying part is, can I do that again? So it's I don't think it's any different than asking Mark or Mike what it's like to try to better your, or Sidney to do you know, one more war movie that's as good or better than some that came before. But thankfully I was able to find that sweet spot.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everybody. And right now we're gonna play a quick 30-second clip of the score. Great. I don't know if you guys want to talk about that, a quick 30-second clip.
It didn't come through very well, but it was, that's actually the beginning of that, it's called Nightfall. It's from the beginning of that scene that does pan up to the heavens in the Aurora Borealis.
All right, great. Thank you guys so much for your time. Sidney, Michael, Blake, Mark. You guys have done really great. Everybody had great questions. Thank you so much for everybody taking the time today. We really, really do appreciate it.